Ultrasound knobology. Well, now we get to dive into what some of the ultrasound knobs and controls mean and how to use them. And while my goal here is not to do a comprehensive review of all the possible knobs and controls on all of the possible ultrasound systems, as that would be an extremely daunting task, I do want to provide you with a foundation of what are the most common controls and the most important controls and how to use them, so as to get your hands on the ultrasound machine to start using them. The nice thing is once you have those basics down, you can get additional training on your specific ultrasound system. This many times is provided by the ultrasound vendor or by someone in your clinical setting who already knows how to use the machine. And while layouts between different ultrasound systems do vary, many of the controls are very similar between each ultrasound system. The layouts may look very simple, like this ultrasound system on the left, or may look very complex. But I assure you, many of the controls are the same between these two systems. The simple system allows you to more rapidly use ultrasound clinically, but there are limitations to the simple system. There are some things you will not be able to do with that system that you can do with the more complex system. So you have to find what ultrasound system fits your particular needs. Many times I'm asked, well, which system is the best? Well, the system is the best if it fits your particular clinical needs and you feel comfortable using it. So let's dive right in. The first control I'd like to discuss is gain. And think of gain as the volume knob, if you will. If you turn up the volume on your stereo, the music gets louder, right? Well, you haven't actually changed the original sound source, though. If you're playing from a CD player or streaming an audio file, for example, you haven't changed that original sound source. You've just amplified the audio signal to make it louder. It's the same way with gain. If you remember, power is the intensity of the ultrasound beam sent out from the machine and transducer. On the machine, you would have to turn up the power to increase the intensity of the beam sent out, where gain is how much you amplify the intensity of the signal coming back to the machine. Now, in ultrasound, if you think of volume as brightness, then as you decrease the gain, it's going to become darker. As you increase the gain, it's going to become brighter. Let's look at some examples. On this image on the left, it's too dark. You're not able to fully see everything on the screen, where on this image on the right, it's too bright. So on the left, because the gain is too low, you would need to increase your gain. On the right, because the image is too bright, you would need to decrease your gain. And if you do that, what you see is that your ultrasound image has the correct gain. It's smooth across the image, it's not too bright, it's not too dark. And this is sort of that Goldilocks phenomenon, right? It's not too hot, it's not too cold, it's just right. So in this video, here's an example of turning the gain up from too dark to too bright to back down. Now it's just right. And how do you know it's just right? Well, something that should appear anechoic, or without echoes, should appear black. So for example, a blood vessel should be black. If you have the gain up too high and you've artificially created echoes, it's too bright. On the other hand, if you turn it too dark to where you're not able to see the structures that you're looking for, it's too black. And so the parenchyma of organs you'll see have typical ultrasound appearances. And the more you gain, the better you'll get at it. You'll need to find that Goldilocks position of the image looking just right. Well, that was a discussion of overall or total gain, but there's something called time gain compensation, or TGC for short. And if you remember the principle of attenuation, with distance, the intensity of the sound beam decreases. So automatically, things that are deeper in the body are going to come back with less intense echoes. So if we did not compensate for that, then images would automatically go from bright on the top to dark on the bottom. So because the machine knows ultrasound physics, it compensates for that so that the picture appears homogeneous from top to bottom. But due to various factors, sometimes that time gain compensation does not appear proper. And therefore, you have controls here to where on the screen, you can adjust gain at varying levels from top to bottom. It may be in this slider format, as depicted on the left, or it may be in this format where just the top half of the screen or the near field is adjusted and the bottom half of the screen or the far field is adjusted. So let's see some examples of that. If we look on the left image, we see that the near field or the top part of the image is a different brightness than the far field. This is improperly adjusted. Conversely, on the opposite side, we see that the near field is darker than the far field. The image should appear homogeneous. If we properly adjust this, then we see that from top to bottom, the time gain compensation is even. The image appears smooth and homogeneous. Here's a video example where time gain compensation is being applied in the near field, increasing the gain, and then slightly decreasing the gain. In this video, the far field, the gain is being turned up and then being decreased, to where at the end it should appear smooth and homogeneous across the entire image. So the next control I want to discuss is depth. And depth is fairly simple. It's simply the depth on the screen that is displayed. You'll see in this image that the depth is down here at 20 centimeters. And on this video, we see that the depth is being adjusted. It's made more shallow, and then it gets more deep. And if you'll notice, on the screen, there's these markers, and these markers are depth markers. Every small dash is 1 centimeter. Every larger dash is 5 centimeters. And it corresponds with the depth on the image. Now, this is not the depth that the ultrasound transducer is penetrating into the body. Remember, that is determined upon the frequency that's chosen in the ultrasound transducer. It's simply what depth is displayed on the screen. Now we're going to discuss focal zone. And if you remember from us discussing focal zone in the physics portion, this is where the ultrasound beam is the narrowest, and therefore it gives us the best image quality or the best resolution. And if you look on this ultrasound image on the left, you'll see this arrow, and that is where we have told the machine to focus at this level. But if you notice on this image on the right, we've created 2 focal zones telling the image to focus here and here. And see the improvement in the image quality of the gallbladder here on the left and the gallbladder on the right. This is because we've told the machine to focus on the area of interest. We've narrowed the beam at that spot and improved our resolution. Well, on the top left of this screen, you'll see your focal zone buttons up and down. That's how you adjust your focal zone. And you'll see on this video clip here that your focal zone is being adjusted. That's you telling the ultrasound machine, focus the beam width the most narrow at this area and thus improve my resolution at that area. Now, you can have a single focal zone or you can have multiple. In this video clip, you see that there's first 1, then 2, and then 3 focal zones. And each of those can be adjusted independently. So then one would say, why not have a myriad of focal zones throughout the entire image so that your entire image spatial resolution is improved? Well, the trade-off is that as you put more focal zones on the machine, you decrease your frame rate. And your frame rate is one of the things that determines your temporal resolution. So the temporal resolution is how accurately is what's happening in real time in the patient being displayed on the ultrasound image. For example, in a beating heart. Is what's happening in real time with that beating heart being displayed in real time on the ultrasound image. If your frame rate is too low, there can be a lag between what's happening in real time and what's being displayed on the image. Or worse yet, you can actually lose information in time of what's happening in a real patient on the ultrasound image because your frame rate is too low. So you need to use your focal zones judiciously such that you maximize your spatial resolution and improve that, but that your temporal resolution doesn't suffer. Well, that was Ultrasound Knobology Part 1. Join us in the next video for Part 2.